today we are very happy to have with us Anna Hougaard, joining us all the way from Germany. Is this Berlin now you're in, Anna?
Yes, I'm in Berlin.
From Berlin then. So Anna is an architect, designer, she's a visualizer and curator. She's also the editor of the recently published book on architectural drawing, The Artful Plan. And she's also an educator, an architectural educator, having taught at Technical University Berlin and the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Copenhagen. And today she will be talking to us about animated drawings. So Anna, the microphone is on to you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well enough. I'm doing this without a headset because my headset just broke, so I hope it works out like this. Yeah, Sophia, Matthew, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for the presentation. I met Sophia thanks to our common interest in drawings at, I think, at least 2 conferences, and yeah, we published, Martin, a colleague from Copenhagen, and me, we just published this book, The Artful Plan, where Sophia also has an essay, which you can enjoy reading. Yeah, so you're welcome to ask questions. I mean, but maybe we'll do that after the talk, I suppose. I think it's too many. I wasn't really aware how many students there would be, so I think it's probably better after the lecture, or otherwise we could have done it more like interactively, but now I'm just gonna go for it.
Yes, so in the end for questions.
Okay, cool. So do you see my screen now?
Yes, it's perfect. It's full screen.
Good. All right. Okay, so well, this is about animated drawings, and I'm just gonna try to talk, well, about animations. They're not necessarily animation techniques. Actually, I'm not gonna talk about that at all, but more about, well, how a drawing process might become animated, or how you can understand some kind of social animations, and then also, well, of course, also animation as captured in drawing as movement notations and stuff like that. So, I was, Sophia specifically asked me also to talk about my developed surface drawing. So I'm actually just gonna start flipping through some slides about the developed surface drawing technique, an essay by Robin Evans. That I was very fond of. I was very fond of all Robin Evans' theory as I did my PhD, The Animate Drawing, which was finished in 2016. And so here's one quote by Robin Evans from the Developed Surface Drawing essay, where he says, "We have to understand architectural drawing as something that defines the thing it transmits. It's not a neutral vehicle transporting conceptions into object, but a medium that carries and distributes information in a particular mode. It does not necessarily dominate, but always interacts with what it represents." So I just think that this quote is very essential for understanding what Robin Evans is about, not just in the essay Translations from Drawing to Building, but also in all the essays that I read by him, also in the projective cast. And this understanding of drawing as something that affects what it transmits, but also can become affected by, for instance, social developments, which is what he also is talking about in the developed surface drawing technique. So this is a drawing that shows what the developed surface technique does. I assume that you have seen images like these. By the way, do you also see this little hand when I move across the screen?
Yes, we can see that. That helps.
Good. So this drawing kind of puts shows how the technique works. Basically, you fold down the interior walls of a space. You fold it down flat so that you can draw it on a 2D plane, and therefore also the furniture follows according to this logic from the 17th century, where the technique was where the use of the technique intensified, as Robin Evans notices in this essay. And so this is just a timeline that I did where you see how of Evans, where Evans sort of tells us how the use of the technique intensifies around 1760, and then it declines, and there are some mutations on the way. He calls that mutations, and then it dies. So he's talking about, you could say, the life and death of a drawing technique. Of course, it doesn't really die because we can still use it. But it's interesting how he describes its path through life. It starts out kind of in the middle of the around 1750s, 60s, where the interior drawings in these English, like upper class mansions and museums, and he notices that the architects are starting to use the technique to fold down the walls so that they can draw ornaments on the walls, and it's not a problem to actually work like this because the floor is not used, or it's used like only temporarily. When you move the furniture away from the wall, the furniture lives like it clinches to the walls, but you can move it away, put it into a circle on the floor, and then have your social interaction, then you put it back. So that was kind of like the habit of the time, as he describes it. So there is this kind of, he calls it, there is, oh my God, what's the word? A nexus of practices. So there is the practice of drawing, the drawing technique that the architects use. There's the practice of how people live. And then there's also like the practice of the floor plan, actually. And all these practices, they interact with each other, and that have an effect on how the buildings look, but it also kind of in the end feeds back, and the drawing technique kind of dies out. But yeah, so he also he describes this change in how the floor plans are laid out from a more like hierarchical kind of layout with representational rooms, and then like smaller rooms for the servants, and then it becomes more of a layout where you have like pearls on a string. The rooms are more like pearls on a string. You travel through every room. Every room is like a closed room, world in itself, and therefore this technique also is so useful, because when you fold down the walls, obviously you cannot see the connections to the other rooms. You're kind of blocking those connections, and you can focus completely on the world within this room. So there are some nexuses that start to match there between the different practices. But then there comes this impulse from how people live. So instead of arranging the chairs in a ring on the floor, not being interested what's behind the door, what's outside, there comes this influence from garden planning and landscape planning, where and people start to move more freely in the spaces, and you start to want to look beyond the space, like you see in the central perspective, and that whole influence kind of disrupts this setup between the developed surface drawing technique, where you we fold down the walls, you focus on that one room, you can ornament all the walls. But once you want to start to making those connections to the other rooms and to the landscape, and set the furniture free from the walls, and then the technique mutates. And he finds these drawings. He says they're hilarious. They are also, like, I think, really inspiring. You can see that the architects are searching. All kinds of drawing techniques come together. Up here you see there's supposed to be a piano, but it's drawn as a floor plan projection, while here is, I think it's a small perspective and stuff like that. So everything is kind of mixed, and yeah, and this is kind of the mutation. And then these very nice, but also, as he says, kind of funny drawings are searching drawings come into existence. And then, but then at some point, and Robin Evans says, like with this drawing by John Soane, you return to the practice before the developed surface drawing when you want to describe the interior, and you return to simply, well, sections with elevations inside of them, interior elevations, and also a perspective, so that you have like a 3D image. So yeah, that's my resume of Robin Evans' developed surface drawing essay, which of course has many other levels as well, which I've not gone into here. But I'll just continue by showing you, I mean, all these drawings I think are very beautiful, done with a lot of care and appreciation. And even a drawing like this by John Soane, which is then, so to speak, after the developed surface technique died, is of course great for showing all these interior things that's going on. Here I just wanted to show from another context that this is a French architect that, and it's actually it's late in the life and death of the developed drawing surface. You could say it's already kind of dying out here, the typical use of it. And here you can see how this architect, well, he started to make a paper cut out of the drawing technique so that you could actually fold it into it to become a 3D room, something that I also did in some of my drawings. But it's like, it really shows the way the technique works. And of course, like I said, it never really died. I just, when I read the essay, kind of looked back through drawings that I had made for other projects and found some that were where you just spontaneously would use this kind of technique because it simply was practical. If you were to draw tiles on the walls, or if you were to like decorate a wall or try out colors and patterns on walls, this would simply just be very practical. And also for exhibitions where you place works on the wall, it's useful. This is the developed surface drawing for the exhibition Drawing Millions of Plants, which was the conference, also the conference which I briefly told you about, where Sophia was also attending, and where we now published the Artful Plan from the proceedings of this conference. So for such purpose, of course, it's extremely useful. So this was like the theoretical part of the talk. From now on, I'm just going to talk about my drawings from the PhD until now, basically. I've called it Reanimating the Developed Surface because that was a chapter in my PhD which was, well, devoted to this Robin Evans idea that drawing techniques are connected to life, to how people live, but they also affect what's being actually built. So it's a kind of complex setup that has sort of influence, and yeah, that influence where the different parts in the setup influence each other. At least that was what I was describing this chapter of the PhD. It was called The Animate Drawing, and I finished it in 2016. And it was done, I should say, as a PhD, which included artistic research. which I did it in Copenhagen. I'm from Denmark, but I live in Berlin. But I did it in Copenhagen, the PhD, and there you can do an artistic research PhD. You cannot do that everywhere, but there you can. So it was, on the one hand, the PhD contributed to artistic research methodology. I used drawings as part of the research, so there was always a drawing chapter and a written chapter. And I kind of investigated these drawing reasoning processes where the logic of a drawing comes together with intuition, and because of this combination of logic and intuition, it also I used a lot of diagram philosophy in particular to describe these drawing processes. So it was about methodology, but it was also about going from a more analog drawing situation to a more digital one. So I started in 2011, and at that point it was a huge discussion like, will architects keep on drawing? I think today, although I don't follow so closely the state of the arts about drawing right now, I do think that discussion kind of silenced out a bit. It's like, we're more in a post-digital phase of the drawing where you draw with the digital tools as well. But you see this interest in analog digital media throughout the drawings. So I'm just gonna show you 3 drawing processes, I think, and I'm showing quite a lot of process here. It should be said about these drawings that they have no pre-given goal, which is unusual for an architectural drawing. So usually you have a program or some kind of constraints, some functions that you need to sort of attend to in your drawing. But here I was drawing in relation to theory, and so for that reason, Robin Evans was also very inspiring because his theory was so close to architectural practice in a way. So reading the developed surface essay, you could start drawing, and so I just drew my my working office, my office here. You see my office. A way to finding into a process. I would say that these are kind of also drawings that are about analyzing a space in terms of sizes, in terms of dimensions and surfaces, like noticing what directions are there in the space that break with other directions, are there beams and stuff like that. So such investigations into architectural drawings is not anything new. I think you can find them in a lot of people's work, and to mention like a few famous one that I was also inspired by was, for instance, Peter Eisenman's drawings of the Casa del Fascio. You can just Google that, and but also something like Bernacciumi's Manhattan transcripts, like, which show these drawing processes that are very kind of internal into like architectural themes, but are also extremely generative drawing processes where one step leads to the next and where you are investigating some kind of architectural question. And yeah, I think that was what I was trying to do here as well. I was making, you could say, a kind of first set of rules or some restraints, which this was about, well, folding, well, the area of the walls, how would that be able to be folded into the room in a kind of free form with these profiles in the middle. And I mean, like I said, this is a process without a pre-given goal. So So it's very tentative in a way. And so I've basically folded the surface into a kind of cave-like space into the middle of the room, and I started to fold in different ways. This is here like with different techniques. Like this is an origami software. I have written here the source to the the person who has made it, if you're interested. And using this software had kind of like a byproduct of a lot of ornamentation, because the software was developed only to a certain stage of optimization, because I could also basically fold it like this simply. Yeah, so there were all of these technical little investigations that I went on here. And I also included it into the speak because I know some of you have about the interior of a grotto. And when I was looking through these drawings, I thought that there was something grotto-like about this little fold in the middle of this very classical space. Yeah. So another layer, or another kind of in-between step in this process, was adding functions to the developed surface drawings. Still, the walls make up a kind of confinement of the surface that I could try and fold in so that it would become furniture-like objects within the space. And then I had introduced like an interior layer to the space in a way, and that was kind of the step then stopped. And during this process, there were all the time stops where there were like, it came to a kind of conclusion like this, and then I would have to break it up somehow in order to let something new into the process. So this is one of those break-up drawings where I'm trying to allow something new into the process, just cutting paper models, adding other materials and stuff like that. And that became kind of the next phase that I wanted to test out, which was not just folding like an imagined interior skin, but was taking like the whole room to be a skin that you could fold, which had different layers. And here, of course, the complexity level went up, because now folding in and folding out the furnitures could have so many different positions, and there could be made so many different spatial situations with it. Yeah, that the complexity went up through this kind of layering process. I built this as a little model. Here you can see what I mean with this. Many spaces can be made with this little kind of machine, like space generator machine. I want to mention here also that I definitely see a kind of affinity between the developed surface drawing and cutting paper and laser cutting, because these are drawing techniques or spatial techniques that are about showing a 3D space in a flat 2D surface. So there was some association there as well. So this then became the conclusion drawing in a way of my developed surface drawing chapter for the PhD. And it has 4 layers, black, blue, red, and green. The outer layers are more like the room-sized layers, and the inner layers are the furniture scale layers. So there is still this architectural convention in there, you could say. Here to the left, you see the whole drawing. You see the unfolded plan, or the unfolded room at the bottom, and then you see the various layers in elevation view and how they can move when you flip them from a flat position to a three-dimensional position. So that's also what I mean a little bit by another kind of animation, that these are drawings that capture a lot of movement, like there is this temporal component, but all the stills are captured in one frame. So it's an animation captured in one drawing, you might say. So here you just see those elevation views a little bit better. All those rotational movements that sort of comes from the technique being about clapping in and out, like walls hinging on floors or ceiling hinging on walls. So the whole idea of everything being hinged together is notated here, you could say. And the top last ones, the more furniture-like layers. So they also come from this process, which was then something that I started up in parallel with the 2D drawings, flat 2D drawings. I was also doing some small animations of the model in 3D Studio Max, and I think this is where I need to switch my screen. I hope this works, so that you can see the animation. Here we go. I hope you see it.
Yes, it's there.
You can find cool. You can find more of this on my homepage. I did a lot of small animations for the PhD for other drawing chapters. They're all there. Oh. Okay. So I'm just gonna flip back to the PowerPoint again. Just a second. Go. Okay, so again, this was kind of a new step where the from being about one room that could move, that was animated, it became a field of rooms, you could say. And also this is the lower part here is kind of well, it's not a floor plan, but it's seen from the top, and here you see the elevation view. And that kind of again opened up the drawing process for new aspects, which were more landscape-like aspects or field-like aspects, you could call it, where I was simply just looking for it started to have something of an urban fabric, like putting these metaphors onto the drawing, giving it names and stuff like that. But it remained kind of this more abstract level. And what I was, or it didn't actually stop here, but the very last drawing is this map, which is a map of a lot of developed surface drawings, animations that I made. And this map became, it moved into, it kind of related to other chapters that I had in the PhD about mapping, about how you can reason with mappings, and how mappings can be completely qualitative, or they can be completely quantitative and understandable, or they can also follow some kind of, as opposed to that, follow a kind of more internal logic, like this one, where it's at some point it's finished, like this point was reached here. From now on, I had the feeling that it would be, I had made such a generative framework in a way that it would just, I could zoom in, zoom out, it could become productive in a new way again and again, but there was still, it was a formal kind of machine also, and there was kind of some basic principles that needed to maybe be changed if the drawings were actually to change, or the content of the drawings were actually to change. So that's what I'm gonna talk to you about next. I'm just gonna look at time. I don't really have the feeling. Okay, I think we're good on time. So I'm gonna show you this project, the Bastards Park, which does not have so much to do with the developed surface drawing technique anymore, but more with what I'm interested in these animated drawings, you might say. And it's a project that I did shortly after the PhD was finished for an exhibition also at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts in Copenhagen, which was called Words on Words. And it was also an artistic research exhibition. And like with Robin Evans' essay, where he is describing this kind of disturbance in the convention, like the developed surface drawing technique, it's kind of a disturbance in the conventions of orthogonal drawing and perspectival, central perspectival drawing. And it's also describing kind of a transition from one way of living to another. And it's also describing, or you see in those last mutational drawing, how you can be searching with drawings. I thought that was really interesting to show, I thought it was inspiring to see these, to deal with these disturbances in the convention, if you like. And so since the content of my PhD was also about this transition from analog to digital, I call this project the Bastards Park. I think that might maybe sound a bit weird in English. A bastard is not something that you would say to someone you don't like in Danish. It's more like a hybrid. Like a bastard, it's somebody's what do you call that? Like if you have not been married and you get a child, then it's an child. It's not. It was not supposed to be. It was not within the convention, you could say. And this child is standing outside of the convention, and it's a hybrid. So I mean, this term of the bastard came from there, and then also because there is something creature-like to the term a bastard. Oh, it's yeah. For this project, I gained inspiration from this park. It's a park outside of Rome, made around 16th century. It's called the Sacro Bosco. Sorry for my German accent. Like the Sacred Forest or the Monsters Park. And it's a mannerist park where all these stone creatures are lying dormant around. And so that was my inspiration for this, or let's say my parallel for this project. Like before I had like the Robin Evans parallel for the developed surface series. Now I have this kind of, conceptual parallel for this project. And here you see a digital drawing to the left, which was I made with processing. I had a really nice teacher, Abe Passers, who taught me some processing. You can Google him if you like. And to the right, simply some drawings of movements, hand drawings, and so these drawings are about hybrids between analog and digital ways of drawing. And you also see here this little thin line. So it is actually a plot. It's a site. So that was kind of inhabited with all these little geometrical green figures. It's a site in Berlin. It's a park. I then imagined 4 types of bastards. I have them down here in the legend, and I will present them one by one. This is like the further of this green drawing here. The types like the these 4 various types I'm going to describe right away are sort of positioned and fill the space of the park, but also have like areas where they don't the most. And there's also like something at stake around patterns, but maybe so this is a sketch. I'll show you some process well, because I hope that heightens the understanding a bit. This is a sketch from this type, and its function, or it's the space it makes. It's a pavilion-like kind of stair where you can go up, and then it's a little tower you can look out. And here it's actually combined with some of the other guys from the park, some of the other creatures there. Eventually, it also became like a swing. So there was this like it's a pavilion-like object that for parks, but it's of course the shapes are generated from these scripts, and then I'm giving it a function and trying to kind of make a construction out of it. You could say. Just some drawings, actually a developed surface drawings, just developed in Rhino of the whole surface of just one particular of these creatures. I think, oh, is there, no, there's not one missing here, sorry. Yeah, so this was, it also, I think, looks like some kind of splashed out little insect. So it's, yeah, I mean, these are not animations, but I do think that they have something animalesque in them. The next little creature here is a stool. It was, again, I'm just gonna flip back to this. This is, yeah, this little guy. It's a folding pattern for a stool that you can. The idea was basically that people can have a piece of cardboard cut out like this, and then they can fold their stool, and then it might create some kind of community, and then they could sit down together. So, yeah, I mean. You would probably optimize that much more if you were to produce that in a large scale and all kind of stuff like that. But for this very particular development, that was the idea. And it was also a way of taking it from 3D, from the digital into the analog, where all of a sudden forces were at stake. The development of this little stool became actually kind of about statics, what could carry, like the torsion of the structure would I would have to kind of work with that, because it would simply just, when I was standing on this one or sitting down, it would flip and it would die in the end. Until finally I had it folded in and out so many times and optimized the folding pattern a bit more so that it could actually be folded and you could stand on it. So yeah, this was also like one of these programs that could be in such park. And here you see again a movement notation of its folding. I mean, this is very far away from being an IKEA manual of how to fold something. It's much more a drawing of yeah, of the movement, but also a drawing that, at least when I look at it, I read all kind of these kind of movements of an animal or something. Like there is like this animalesque, yeah, frozen movement to it, I think. The third bastard here is inspired by a zoetrope. Zoetrope, I don't know how to pronounce that. You see one here down in the corner. I thought that was a really inspiring little object, an early animation technique. You see that on the inside there is drawn a little series of persons moving, and when you look from the outside through one of these peepholes and you spin it, then you see the person moving inside. So it's a little film technique, an early animation technique. So I just took that as an idea and scaled it up so it could be something like of a carousel pavilion in the park, that could be, yeah, that you could push so that it would, yeah, turn around, circulate around you. And then the final one was more like the idea of a shelter structure. And here you see, like, again, it's a shelter structure where you could fold out like a little terrace, or you could like take in a little stair, and it was like the whole time this kind of kit of parts idea, or folding in, folding out. So a lot of the ideas from before were kind of following into this project. Yeah. So this was finally shown at the exhibition, and yeah, so this is also where the story kind of ends, about this second series of drawings about animations. It's another kind of animations, I suppose, than we just saw with the developed surface, and also what Evan described in his developed surface essay. And then sort of like here, I think I have spoken almost the time out, but is it okay to close it up? I think it will take about 10 minutes or so. Like,
yes, it's fine with us for you to take some more time.
okay.
If we can afford that, since we're not in a physical room.
Cool.
So
Okay.
Unfold it, Matt says.
So what this is basically sort of my third little project that I'm going to show you. This is a very recent project, and you also see that it kind of falls out of line with the other one. This was is a project that I did for the Deutsche Bahn, the German railways. Yeah, I do a lot of work for them, actually. And here we work with the social in a completely the way like you and I know it today. You could say, like, we are working on squares in front of railway stations. Railway stations, train stations are often rough places, and you have really social challenges there. So this project was not, it was a rough place. It was in Köln, Cologne, Mülheim, so a little bit outside of Cologne. Yeah, the idea was to kind of make a transition between the train station and the surrounding neighborhood where people would actually go and be, and yeah, there would also be things happening and stuff like that. So we had, like, you can see various programs, like more of a gardening corner, more like of a children's corner, more like of a coffee corner, and then a waiting, because that's also something you do when you go to the train station. Yeah. So I just wanted to add this to this narrative that I'm building up in this lecture about the animation and also the social animation, because for me I mean, this is just really interesting to actually, you know, working with also difficult places. And I had the questions from a student this spring who was asking me, what does an artistic researcher do working for the German railways? And I mean, it was a really good question. And it's also funny, you know, how can I actually have built up something with all this artistic research, with this reservoir of drawings that can be sort of transformed into something that a German railway can actually use. So yeah, I mean, it's just a way of kind of going full circle back to dealing with, to actually acting in a social field, also through, of course, visualizations, drawings, is also something that's used in the process extremely a lot. You get allowance to do stuff because of drawings and visualizations, because of the way it looks, or give promises about how it's going to be. So I see that actually as a big responsibility of these visualizations and drawings, because we give so many promises with them. Just flipping through here, yeah, because that's my new research interest. It's these visualizations, this architectural media, the visualization that gives promises and really interact with human beings. In the artful plan, I have written a small essay about it. It's about renderings and building signs in Berlin. So in Berlin, it's also about windows. I'm gonna try to explain the combination between building signs and window right away. In Berlin, a lot of buildings are being built at the moment. Like there's not enough flats, apartments. It's the same problem as in many other European big cities, and the rent is going up. So this interest of developing Berlin and building, I mean, we have to have new buildings, right? But there's also speculation, of course, going on. And for instance, the speculation is about the windows in the existing buildings that are being changed for no reason. I think this is my next slide. No, sorry, just gonna flip forth and back a little bit here. This is to the left. You see this is a typical Berlin old building, the old building window. The tenement houses all have these kind of windows, and they are being taken out. We are having new windows all the time, and I was very upset with that. Taking out something that works so well and then increasing my rent, I was not so happy with it. But now actually, like a law has been put through that rents cannot just be set up, increased. There has become, they have put a lid on it here in Berlin, so we're actually very lucky. But yeah, so that was kind of one flow going on in my mind as I've started this research project, you could say. And then there was this other flow that you see all these visualizations when you walk on the street, and I am sure you know this. And they show you stuff on the images that is very positive. You know, it's not, there's no criticality in there, because it's mainly about selling. And some of them even look at someone like this or that one, they become very scenographic, because the image starts working with actually the urban situation. Like you have the feeling that you can like almost sit down here, right? So I was just interested in how these images work that are so all over the city. And I started looking and saw that some of them also said stuff like this, non-binding visualization. And also myself being a person making visualizations and selling them to people, I was starting to, well, wonder what kind of forces are at play here. And then I saw this graffiti here. It says, it's written on the rendering, it says, how asocial, millionaire project, and who moves in? Animals who are 0% interested in the lives of others. And another graffiti said, social housing for renting ought to be built here. And actually, I found more of these graffitis. Now I haven't included them, but people actually react really strongly on these images in negative way, but also in positive ways. Like, for instance, working for the German railroads, we do use the images to convince people, you know, for us to allow us to build it. So I mean, it's very tricky. But for me, the conclusion is you have to be extremely cautious about, you know, what you put on the images and also who you do it for, I suppose. Yeah. So this was then a little small research project, or the essay for the Artful Plan, where I did some renderings that included the Berlin window as something that you could buy and add on to your apartment, as a kind of, well, it's of course a kind of political statement, a critique about the city kind of being, or the building substance of the city being extremely influenced by money processes. Yeah. I did also actually build a little building sign for an exhibition this winter. Here you see it in the back of this of the exhibition space here. During it's being built up right here, and this was, well, then, I mean, I just basically took the idea of making a social housing project for that could be wander into Berlin and be put down. Yeah. Also kind of an animated structure in a way. And yeah, so this is my last slide. Yeah, I hope I have given you like an impression of how I work and how I understand animation, and also maybe have given you a little bit of insight into this generative drawing process that I've been investigating in my PhD, and which I'm still actually very interested in, although now I'm moving more into working with visualizations and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this is where I will stop, and then I hope you have some questions.
Thank you, Anna. Normally here we would all applaud you, but now with a small line.
Thank you.
And relay. So thank you very much for a very interesting talk. Shall we address the audience now for any questions? If you have any questions, you could please use the raise your hand icon, you know. Does Laura have a question? Because I saw Laura image. Nicholas? No, he has.
Hello. Hello, Anna. Hello, Sophia.
Hi.
So my main question is, like, I don't know if you mentioned that at the beginning, at the very beginning, but I was just wondering what made you like start thinking about this sort of research. I mean, what was the initial point? What intrigued you in order for you like to start thinking about that?
For the PhD.
In general, like your approach, about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it definitely started with my. I think it started with my master's project, where I did a lot of animations for my master's project. You can also see that on my homepage. And I also was working already like with this, let's say, kind of moved 3D shapes in the drawings, or frozen movement shapes in drawings. So from there on, and taking that interest into the PhD was kind of, it was not so, it was not that big, there wasn't a bigger gap between that. And then, of course, I was studying at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts, and then going to make a PhD there as the next step was within the same environment. So I don't know if that answers the question, but if you mean in terms of yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I see we have a question from, we are very happy to have also Kostas Avramidis with us, joining us from the University of Cyprus. Kostas, can you hear me?
Hi there. Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. Hi, Sophia. Hi, Matt. Hi, everyone. And first off, Anna, thank you so much for this fascinating talk. I absolutely loved it. To be honest, Sophia knows that I'm also fascinated with drawings, let alone when these are animated. On top of that, I also have a thing, if you like, about graffiti. And so I cannot help myself and start my comment, if you like, on from what you mentioned at the very end about the graffiti on the on this surface, which was a representation of an interior space, right? So in a sense, I was wondering whether this animation, this developed, this unfolding of the interior can actually, which of course relates as you've so eloquently shown, it relates very, very closely to the interior. And I was wondering whether this could also work at the urban scale, at the exterior level. So in a sense, when we unfold, when we develop an interior, it is as if we start making connections of the interior with the exterior, if that makes sense. Because when you build this model of yours and you open it up, it opened up itself to the outer world, if I may say. So in that sense, it might worth exploring if the exterior world can be also developed in a similar fashion, i.e. using the same technique. So can we, for instance, start thinking about developing or start trying to represent this interior space, which is already at the exterior, and I'm talking about the render image, which was occupied by the graffiti. Does it make sense? But other than that, I have used the developed surface myself in relation to graffiti, which was made indoors, and this link of the interior and exterior is also something that is of interest. That's why, and this is where this question or remark, if you like, comes from. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for a very nice observation, because it is true. You can of course fold the inside out to become the outside, and I had not actually. Yeah, I mean, it was very to the spot that these graffitis on the interior surface, although they are outside, I mean, there are a lot of levels coming together there, like a lot of architectural levels, and also like a level of communication directly on the street, which is, I think, yeah, definitely something that could be gained more knowledge from, I suppose.
Any other questions from the audience? Right, I think it has been very rich, and Kostas' question also concluded things quite nicely. I think for me, I am just very grateful, Anna, to see this very rigorous scrutiny, which is not only of the drawing technique, but also of the room as an entity, and then by extent possibly even of the city, if we take into account your later projects and the things that Kostas pointed out. And for me, it's also very important how this work reveals this agency of the drawing technique and reminds us that what you mentioned at the beginning, that it is a bit like the chicken and the egg. So what came first, the representation or the building, and the other way around. And absolutely, I fully embrace your understanding of animation as even within the drawing and the way that even as a still object, it animates your imagination, or it animates your eye, your subjectivity. I think that is still a social effect, right?
Yeah, true.
So,
definitely.
Thank you very much for this. Matt, would you like to add something?
I think it's honestly, Anna, we're honoured and fantastic talk. I'm very excited about how the various environments unfolded and the types of drawings, the sort of media that was presented. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't hear you so well, sorry. But yes, Sophia, what did you say? Oh.
Well, also.
What happens when someone hijacks your computer for a session?
Sorry, I have basically put it away. Honestly, I cannot relate. I cannot even remember it right now. I just want to return back to my comment, but I wanted to add that there is as well an element of land art in projects such as your park, which really brings forth an idea of almost drawing over architecture as a kind of large-scale drawing effect, which I think is quite interesting.
True. Yeah.
So Hafsa also sends her thanks. It was a very rich and interesting talk. It is nice to see how it started by exploring through drawing without goals, and then instill some of the insights into real, more socially relevant projects. Thank you also, Hafsa.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Yeah. And of course, I mean, I would like to see if you have the opportunity to send me some screenshots for something of your animated drawings. I would of course be interested in seeing that. Yeah, without too much effort on your side, of course.
We'll do that because Matt and I will be looking forward to seeing from our interior students this Friday their animated drawings, and then following this expanded surface drawing. So hopefully we'll be able to forward you some of the work and.
Absolutely, as long as we have the students' permission, we will upload them. Yes. I think a lot of them have pursued making sort of movie files for this. So hopefully we can put this onto a YouTube channel with the students' permission.
Cool. Yeah.
We have to find new ways to share things now that we're online, but mostly, but that also encourages opportunities of seeing people that are further away, like yourself. And thank you again for joining us in this way, which we know speaking into a screen is not always as easy as it is speaking into a room.
No, you're basically speaking to yourself, or I don't know. It's a strange feeling. You have to get used to it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, and yeah, looking forward to see some of your animated drawings.